Hey guys, welcome back into the office and welcome back to our daily devotional series where we're talking about what's next. So, before we get started, if you wouldn't mind doing a couple things for me. Number one, would you go down and would you click on the like or the thumbs up button there just below this video? You can do that whether you're watching on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That'll make sure that you get notified anytime we're about to go live or anytime we're about to put out some new content. And it really helps us out and it helps you out by letting YouTube or Facebook or Instagram know you want more content that's a little bit more God-centered than it is in maybe some of the other stuff that they're sending you. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, it'll help us out a whole lot. So what are we going to get into today? The next step of what's next. Now, we talked yesterday about how there is a time coming when some of this stuff is going to end. Now, some people say that we're in the end times because of the isolation, quarantine, and COVID-19. And while I do believe we're a whole lot closer than we used to be, I don't think this is the actual beginning of the end, as they say. There's still some prophecy in Scripture that has yet to be fulfilled. Now, I believe that prophecy can be fulfilled very quickly. But I think we've got just a minute, and I'll get into some of that here in just a second. So, we talked yesterday about the rapture and about death. And there's two ways you're getting out of this. 95% of people, according to the Bible, will leave this world through death. But there is the thing called the rapture, or the catching away of the saints, and there'll be some people still around that will get to witness that as well. So, but the thing I want to focus on right now is what happens after that? What's next after the rapture and or death? Well, if you leave this world via death, then you get ushered immediately into heaven. We spoke yesterday about how Paul makes the statement that to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And so we believe that once your physical body dies, your spirit and soul, you're made up in three parts, body, soul, and spirit, your spirit and your soul will immediately be ushered in to heaven. Or if you have not turned your life over to Jesus and have not followed him as Lord, there's another outcome. So once that period happens, once you get to heaven, if you die, you have this waiting period until God kind of assembles everyone together. And that will be at the rapture. And then what happens after that? Well, according to the Bible and according to the way we believe, there's a time coming called tribulation, great tribulation, and or Jacob's trouble. And you say, what is all of that talking about? Well, if you remember the story of Jacob, when he wanted to go and to marry Rachel, his uncle Laban said it's not right for the oldest daughter to get married before the youngest daughter. So Jacob had to work an extra 7 years for the hand of Rachel. Now, some people will say Jacob's trouble was actually 14 years, and there's some merit to that. But for the point of today, we're going to talk about the 7-year period of extra work he had to do. And the term Jacob's trouble is actually found in the Bible in Jeremiah chapter number 30 and verse number 7. Jeremiah makes the statement, "Alas, for the day is great, and so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it." So there's a time period coming, and we know it's about 7 years. You know this from the Old Testament. There's Jeremiah, there's Zechariah, there's Micah. There's multiple references to this. Really strong emphasis in Daniel. Daniel's 70th week there's 7 days in a week. You can make a very, very easy transition to 7 years of tribulation during that period. So there's several Old Testament references, but the best reference for this is actually in the book of Revelation. In fact, this is the bulk of the content that you find in the book of Revelation is about the tribulation period. In fact, from chapter number 4 until chapter number 19 is the only place in the entire 66 books of the Bible that the church isn't mentioned one time, or that the children of God is not mentioned one time. I believe that's significant. I believe that's something to pay attention to. And so the purpose of all of this is to get the attention of the Jews. Most people realize and most people know that the Jewish people of today have turned their back on God. Most Jews, and again there are some things called Messianic Jews that do believe in Jesus as the Messiah, but most Jews do not hold that Jesus was the Messiah, and they're still looking for him to come back. And the purpose of, in my opinion, the greatest purpose of the tribulation period is to turn the hearts of the Jewish people back to God. God made a covenant with himself towards the Jewish people that he would never forsake them or he would never forget them. And I believe this is his last ditch effort. So, just to kind of recap, we go from this period that we're in now to the period of death and or rapture, depending on how you leave this world. A couple different options there. And then we believe that there's going to be on earth a period of 7 years that is going to be a period of death and destruction like the world has never seen before. I can promise you, I've studied this for over 20 years. You do not want to be on earth when the tribulation period happens. If my math is correct and if the resources I have are accurate, of the 7 billion people that are on the planet today, only 25% are going to make it through to the other side of the tribulation period. And that's using today's numbers. So, that's what is happening here on earth. But what's happening in heaven? What do we as Christians, or we that follow the law of God, what do we have to look forward to? Well, during that 7-year period is what is called the marriage supper of the Lamb. So, well, where does that term come from? Well, when you look at the rapture and you look at how it's described and how it's structured, it is very familiar terminology to a Jewish wedding. And a Jewish wedding, the reception would basically, the way that we would think of it, the reception lasts for 7 days. So what are we going to be doing in heaven for the 7 years that the world is going through tribulation? Well, we've got a 7-year party being planned for us in heaven. I don't know about you, but that's a really good hope. In fact, it's called the blessed hope for us today. So even though we're going through a difficult period today during this time of isolation, quarantine, and COVID-19, I'm telling you that there's hope coming. The word tells us to not lose hope, that there's going to be more on the backside of this than there was on the front. So wanted to give that piece of information for you today. We're going to continue on this timeline of what's next tomorrow, but wanted to give that to you today. And so we hope that by now that you've hit the like, you've hit the share, you've hit the subscribe. When you hit the subscribe, hit the little bell too, and put that to all, and that way you get every piece of notification that you can that we've put out a new video. And so we thank you guys for tuning in today, and we'll see you next time.